Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, where I get to talk with chiropractors and simplify social media and digital marketing in general. And what a pleasure it is. In fact, I'm super excited. Yesterday, I finally finished. Finally is not the right word because I was quite sad when I got to it. But yesterday, I finished the 5-day Social Media Made Simple challenge. I did it just particularly for chiropractors, and I know that listening to this right now, I have lots of natural health practitioners, not just chiropractors, and I will definitely run one for a broader group. And I needed to test this just with my chiropractic brothers and sisters, mostly because there were some narrow things that I need to focus on. If you missed that, when you see the emails come out again about this, or you hear me on the podcast talking about it, please don't miss it again. I have never, this is really 8 years that I have been teaching this type of content, communication, marketing, and community outreach. I've never had something that's been as impactful as what this 5 days has been. The feedback has been nothing short of wonderful. The breakthroughs that people have been able to have on the inside of this course have been nothing short of extraordinary. And it has built a level of community, which I am so proud of and just loved being a part of. What I wanted to talk about in today's episode was something that I touched upon inside of there. I wanted to talk about the importance of doing B- work. Now, when I first got introduced to this concept, my coach taught me about it. It kind of thrust me back a little bit because I took it as meaning B- work is, putting out poor quality work. And I really don't like poor quality work. But here's what happens. With many of the people that I work with, and try and insert yourself into this. How are things with you? Many of us are pushing towards putting out really great quality work. I love that idea. I really love it with a lot, and particularly I think when we're caring for our patients, this is where your A+ work should absolutely be. But when you're wanting to have a marketing outreach, a community outreach, when you're wanting to start making videos, posting, maybe going live, maybe putting a podcast together like this one, when you're searching for that A+ work, what ends up happening is most of the time is that we never get started. The other way that I see this, and another way of looking at B- work, is this concept of ready, aim, fire. What I want you starting to do a lot more is ready, fire, aim. What ready, aim, fire looks like a lot of the times, it looks like ready, aim, aim, aim. Now, I'll tell you why that happens. The idea of perfection is a lie. And it's a lie for a couple of reasons. It's a lie because perfect doesn't ever really exist. We don't see it anywhere. There's always room for improvement. When we look at artists who've done beautiful work, they look at it and they still see all the mistakes inside of it. The other reason that perfect is a lie is it's a lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves what we're wanting is just better quality work, when in actual fact, we're using that umbrella, we're using perfect as a shield. We're using it as a shield to stop us from being seen. So I want you to push that to the side. I want you to stop using perfection as an excuse. And I want you to start doing more B- work. Now notice, I'm not saying D grade work. This is B- work. B- is still pretty good, okay? Now, B- work, here's the interesting thing about B- work, is that your B- work will continue to improve. If I look at the content that I'm sharing today as a B-, I want this podcast episode now to be a B-. If I'm to compare that to the content that I put out 12 months ago, it's an A+. This is the interesting thing about it. The more B- work that you and I continue to share with our communities, the higher the standard of that B- work goes. I hope that makes sense with you too. If we're not doing, when we're heading for that A+ work, we just never end up getting anything out there, which means we don't improve, we don't get better. And on top of that, we don't get to connect with our community. We don't get to build relationships. We don't get to do any of those kind of things. Now, I wanted to give you some advice on helping you create more B- work. I wanted to share, on the podcast, I'm often talking about Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck is a Stanford psychologist. She's best known for her work that she's done on mindset. She has a book called The Same, it's titled, where she talks about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. working towards a growth mindset. The great thing that she talks about in her book is that you definitely can develop a growth mindset. This is not something we're not either born one way or the other. She says maybe we are, but we can swap back and forward to them. And she also says it's in many areas of our lives, we can swap between the two of them. Some areas of our lives, we can have a fixed mindset. Some areas we can have a growth mindset. But if this is a new concept to you, let me just clarify it for you. A growth mindset basically says this. It says, I can learn new things. I can get better at it. So you might be like me. I'm a 46-year-old chiropractor. I didn't grow up with the internet. I didn't certainly grow up with social media. And you might be thinking, this is all too difficult. This is all too overwhelming. This has passed me by. This is just not for me. Now, Carol Dweck would say in years of her research, and I would support her as well, having coached now thousands of different chiropractors, naturopaths, all of my age, that this is absolutely something that you can learn, and it's something that you can become fantastic at, and it's something that will ultimately, when you implement lots of things that we talk about on the podcast, will help to fill your appointment book. Okay, this is not about you just getting lots of people liking you and following you. This is about getting people inside of your practice and building a community, yes. Side note, here's the thing I've been thinking about a lot. I think the practice of the future will have two communities. It'll have a community of active patients. These are people who are seeing us right now, who already have a high level of know, like, and trust. Hopefully their families are coming and seeing us also. And then you'll have a community of people who are just not seeing you yet, okay? But we need to be building that community. There is this push for social media platforms across the board for us to be building community. When we build community on the social media platforms, there's actually some really nice evidence that it's actually good for our well-being. It brings us closer together. It creates emotional health. When we're on social media and we're in isolation and we're mindlessly kind of scrolling through things, that's the type of behavior on social media that's more likely associated with poor mental health, poor emotional well-being, poor physical well-being. And so we need to be building communities. And so it's important. I got a little bit sidetracked with that too, but that's where the future is going. Back to Carol Dweck and her mindset. I know where I was going. Basically, regardless of how old you are, what your experience is, you can learn to do this. And so let me share 5 of the tips that Carol talks about. When I call her Carol, it's like she's my friend, isn't it? I'm going to pretend that she is my friend. I wish she was my friend. She's an amazing person. I've read lots of her stuff and I've watched lots of her videos. Maybe that's why I feel so familiar with her. Isn't that interesting? We feel familiar people when we're engaging with them all the time. This is what your community needs to be doing with you. Here's the first thing that Carol talks about. She says that we must learn to embrace challenges rather than avoid them. We have to push ourselves into that situation that says, you know what, I'm going to get my social media sorted this year. And this was the very exciting thing that happened inside the 5-day challenge. I was encouraging people to go live each and every day. And the interesting thing is, as people embraced them, day 1 it was difficult, day 2 was even better. And by the time they got to day 5, man, there were people on there just rambling on like they were pros at this. That's all it took, 5 days, an enormous difference. But they had to embrace the challenge. One of the members inside of there shared a story about how, she literally looked at the go live button for 5 minutes before hitting it the first time. And then you wouldn't know it, a few days later, she's producing these really beautiful videos. So Carol says what growth-minded people do is they embrace challenges. Really lovely advice. She also then talks about, with regards to embracing those challenges, the second point she talks about is the way that we look at obstacles. And she says we must persist through obstacles rather than giving up. Here's the interesting thing about failure. The only time failure really happens is when we give up. I'm fascinated by that. Maybe it just took me a while to understand the profundity of that statement. It only becomes failure when we stop. And so maybe you're wanting to get into this social media game. Create some videos. Maybe the first one that you create, there's some stuttering and stammering, and maybe even some people, when they went live inside the challenge, didn't even have the sound on. But if they showed up again the next day, they shot another video, they got a little bit more succinct, they got more clear in what they were sharing, then was the first one a failure? It's not really. So the second thing, obstacles. We must persist through obstacles rather than giving up. Now, these advice here are not only fabulous for you being able to have more success with your social media, they're good life tips also. Carol talks about effort. She says we must see effort as a path to mastery rather than a fruitless endeavor. We know that it's going to take energy and effort from us. And in our world nowadays, the market is constantly promising faster and easier. The 30-day diet down to the 7-day diet, down to the 48-day diet. There's now 7-minute workouts. Everybody is promising faster and easier. Now, some of that is because of efficiencies in the system, but some of us, it's rubbish. I know what it takes to achieve health, and it doesn't come from a 7-minute workout. It doesn't come from a 7-day diet. So we have to be careful because our brain is programmed to want to head in that direction. So therefore, whenever the path in front of us requires effort, we tend to kind of step back. And also understanding that neurologically, we are designed to conserve our energy, and particularly mental energy as well. When our brain has to think new things, it takes a lot of effort. And if your brain has the choice of sitting on the couch and watching Netflix and mindlessly scrolling through the social media platforms, or learning and implementing new things, you've got to understand that by default, what it's going to want to do is it's going to want to stay on the couch. So understanding, letting yourself know in advance, this is going to take some effort. Number 4 is an important one, is criticism. We must learn from criticism rather than ignoring this useful feedback. And I want to differentiate 2 different sorts of criticism and who we're taking criticism from as well. We need to have an important group of people in around us, a coach, family members, peers, maybe some of your patients, who we value their feedback, we value their judgment, and we're going to listen to them. It doesn't mean just because it's your coach, doesn't mean just because they're your patient that they're going to be right, but we need to be open and learning from this criticism. And then we have another group of people that are outside of that circle that it's okay to ignore. From time to time, incredibly rarely, someone will say something cranky to you. A patient will be upset, someone on social media will say something. Now, if we're getting that same feedback over again and again and again, then maybe we need to have a little bit of kind of self-awareness and check in with regards to that. But we need to, mostly, what Carol's point is here, is that we need to learn from criticism. We need to, in fact, embrace that criticism is a really important thing. And the 5th and final thing that Dweck talks about, that people who have a growth mindset have that those that have a fixed mindset don't, or if we wanted to do this, is that we need to be inspired by the success of others. Now, it's interesting, in amongst the coaching group that I'm a part of, because I have a coach too, I want to learn and grow. I'm the littlest fish in this pond, and I'm so damn inspired by the others as opposed to being envious of it. So you might look at other chiropractors out there that are doing great things on social media. You might see their amazing videos. What somebody with a growth mindset does is they're inspired by it and they say, wow, that's amazing, and I can learn to do that too. That's the kind of follow-up sentence that we want to have, as opposed to being, my God, look at that video that Stephanie just made. I could never do that. That's something that a fixed mindset. So we want to start to celebrate the success of others. And I make a point of doing this across all platforms. When I see people doing amazing things, I'm like, that's fabulous. That's amazing. I can't believe, chiropractors knocking it out of the park with the great work they're doing with their patients. Whether that be kind of collection-wise, impact-wise, the fantastic things that they're able to do. These 5 steps, in essence, what they'll help you do is they'll help you do more B- work. The B- work that you continue to do will evolve and grow, and your B- work of next month, next year, will be way better than the B- work from today. In summary, those 5 points that Dweck talks about in moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is we need to embrace challenges. We need to persist through obstacles. We need to see effort as a path to mastery rather than a fruitless endeavor. She talks about criticism. She says we must learn from criticism rather than ignoring it. And we need to see it as useful feedback. And finally, she says we must be inspired by the success of others rather than feeling threatened. For those of you that joined me over this last week inside the 5-day challenge, thank you for joining me. Thank you for playing so full out. For those of you that weren't there, then come and join me next time. I want to see from all of you more B- work Until next time, gang, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. Your community needs you. See you back here real soon. Bye. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out the Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work one-on-one with you to apply, implement, systematize, and help guide you and your practice to the next level. Now you can join me on over at adiomedia.com/join. That's adiomedia.com/join. I'd love to see you in there.